Hey everyone, welcome to Charger Games. My name is Raja and this is another Unity Android game development tutorial. So in this video we're gonna learn about how to detect swipe in your Android device. So we're gonna basically learn how to detect touch swipe controls in Unity in Android. So I'm gonna try to keep it very simple for you, and I'm gonna try to explain each and every line of code. So before starting out, let's take a look at what you're gonna be building at the end of this video. So as you can see here, I have a sample scene, and if I play it right now, and if I go to Window, Console, and right now I have my mobile device attached to my computer by using the Unity remote. And if you don't know how to set that up, make sure to check out my video on how to set up Unity remote and how to detect touches. Okay. So now my device is connected with my computer by using USB, and now you can see that if I swipe my finger up, it will say vertical swipe. If I swipe left, it will say left swipe. If I say right, it will say right swipe. If I say down, it will say down swipe. Okay. So this is pretty much what we're going to be doing first. And then what you're going to do is, then we're going to simply put another quad as our player. And when we swap vertically, what we will do is the player will jump. So let's say I swap vertically. As you can see from here, I have swiped vertically, and as you can see, our player jumps. So again, I can do that and our player will jump. So we'll do that all this from scratch in this video. So with that being said, let's get started. So I'm going to quickly open a new scene. So File, New Scene, and don't save. And I'm going to quickly save this scene. File, Save Scene. And I'm going to go to Save Scene As. And I'm going to name this scene Swipe. And just save it. Okay, so next what you're going to do is I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to name it Swipe Tester, and add component, new script, and I'm going to name it not swipe, swipe of, I don't know what happened, swipe test, create an add, and then I'm going to double click to open it in MonoDevelop. Okay, so it has opened. And before doing this, make sure you go to File, Build Settings, and change your device, change your current platform to Android. Click on Android and click on Switch Platform, and that way we will have our current platform as Android, and it will help us to test. And from here, from the size, you can select this WVGA portrait because we are testing it in portrait mode. Okay, so now let's start our scripting. Now this will probably be a little bigger because I will try to make it simpler for you, so that is why I will be declaring more variables. So that is why it will be a little bigger. So first of all, what do you need? First of all, we need some time. So let's say the basic two things we need is time and distance. Okay, so what this time will do, the time will check for how much time we have swiped. Let's say we have touched our finger on the mobile device, and then we lift it after a few seconds. So a swipe shouldn't be that big. You are not going to swipe your finger for 1 minute or 30 seconds. You're gonna swipe for, let's say, 0.2 seconds, 0.5 seconds. So swipe should be fast, otherwise it won't be a swipe. So what you're gonna do is, we're gonna check the starting time when we are touching our device and the ending time when we are lifting our finger from our device. And we're gonna check if the time is less than our maximum time, only then we're gonna detect swipe. Okay, otherwise not. So we will have a max time beyond which we will not detect it as a swipe. Okay, so we're gonna create a public variable named public float max time, and then we're gonna create another public float variable, and this variable will be our minimum distance. So public float min swipe distance. So there should be a minimum value after which we detect it as a swipe. So let's say I touch my finger on my mobile device and I just lift it at that point. So I don't move my finger, I move my finger slightly and then I lift it. But I don't want that to be detected as a swipe. So for our touch to be detected as a swipe, we need to move our finger a minimum distance. And that's gonna be our minimum swipe distance. Okay. So now 2 more variables I'm gonna detect as float, and this is gonna be our start time and float, and this is gonna be our end time. So this will be our start time when we touch the finger, and the end time will actually check when we lift our finger from the screen. And then another 2 we're gonna detect as vector 3 start pose, where we actually touch our finger at the beginning, and vector 3 end pose. So when we lift our finger from the device, this will be the position of our finger. Okay, so start pose will be the starting position and end pose will be the ending position when we lift our finger from our Android device. Okay, so now we need to check all of this in our update. Okay, so the very first thing we need to do in update is we need to check if we have touched any of our finger in our Android device. So to check that, we're gonna say if input dot touch count is greater than 0, that means we have at least 1 touch on our screen. Only then we're gonna detect all this. And if you don't know about this, you should definitely check out the 3rd video in this series, which is Unity Android touch input controls, and that's gonna be very, very helpful for you. Okay, so when the touch count is greater than 0, then what you're gonna do is, since we will check for only 1 touch, we are not gonna check multiple swipes, so we don't need to check for multiple touches. So we're gonna need to check only 1 touch, and that's gonna be our 0th touch. Okay, so we're gonna store that 0th touch inside a variable, and that variable will be of touch type. So I'm gonna say touch equals to input dot get touch 0. So we are getting the 0th touch. That means the first touch that is touching our device, and then we are storing that inside our touch variable. Okay, so now using this touch variable we can actually check everything that we need. Okay, so let's see what you're gonna check first of all. So first of all, we're gonna check the phase of the touch. So we're gonna check if touch dot phase equals to touch phase dot began. That means our touch has just began. That means we have just put our finger on the screen. And we're gonna also check else if touch dot phase equals to touch phase dot ended. That means we have lifted our finger from the device and our touch has ended. So this will be when we just touch on our screen, and this will be when we lift our finger from the screen. Okay, so when we touch our screen, at that time we're gonna get our starting position and the starting time. So the start time will be equal to time dot time. So when we are touching our device for the first time, at that time we are checking the time and we are storing that into our start time. And our start pose will be equals to touch dot position. Okay, so when we are first time touching our device, at that time we are storing at our starting time, and the position we are touching, we are storing that as our touch position. Okay, so next we're gonna check, and next we're gonna check the same thing when we are lifting our finger from the device. So when we are lifting our finger from the device, at that time our end time will be equals to time dot time. That means the time at that time, and our end pose will be equals to touch dot position. Okay, so this is how we are getting the starting time and our ending time basically. Okay, so now with these things, with this data, we can do whatever we want. So what we need to do next is we need to calculate the distance between these two touches, and then we need to check the direction of the touches. Okay, so here let me create another variable and call that float swipe, not swipe t, swipe distance. So inside that we will store our swipe distance, or how much we have swiped. So to calculate the swipe distance, we'll basically say our end pose minus our start pose dot magnitude. Okay, so this will give us distance between 2 points. So if you remember some algebra or mathematics or geometry, whatever, you know that to detect the distance between 2 points, you need to do like x2 minus x1 minus x2 minus x1 and root over and whole square and all that stuff. So this magnitude does all that for us and gives us the distance between 2 points. Okay, so now we have the distance between 2 points. So we need to check now, and one more thing we need to do is we need to now check the swipe time. So let's make another variable, float swipe time. Okay, so now we have two necessary components that we wanted. So now we have the distance, and we can also calculate the swipe, not swipe t, I don't know why I writing swipe time. Swipe time equals to our end time minus our start time. So now we know the distance and the time. So only thing we need to do now is to check if our swipe time is less than our minimum swipe time, or whatever we named it. We named it our max time. Sorry, less than our max time, and our swipe distance is greater than our minimum swipe distance. So if the time is less than our max time that I have explained at the beginning, and our distance is at least greater than our minimum swipe distance, only then we're gonna test for the swipe. Okay, so then we're gonna call a simple function that is swipe, not swipe time, swipe. And now we're gonna create this function right here out of the update function, of course. So here we're gonna say void swipe, and this is our swipe function. So inside this swipe function we need to do all the things that we need. So what's the first thing that we need to check the swipe? First thing we need to do is we need to actually check if it is a vertical swipe or if it is a horizontal swipe. Okay, so in order to check that, as you can see here, we have the swipe distance. The same way we need to get the swipe, actually get the difference between the 2 points. Okay, so to get the difference between the 2 points, let me create a simple vector2, and I'm gonna name it distance, and inside that I'm gonna store our end pose minus our start pose, and this time we don't need any kind of magnitude because we are just getting the distance. So now we need to check if the vertical swipe distance is greater than the horizontal swipe distance. So if the vertical swipe distance is greater, then it will be a vertical swipe, and if the horizontal swipe distance is greater, then it will be a horizontal swipe. Okay, so we need to check if our distance dot x is greater than our distance dot y. So this is basically the difference between the two touch points. So if the x distance, that is our horizontal distance, is greater, then it will be a horizontal swipe, and if our vertical distance is greater, then it will be a vertical swipe. Okay, so if distance dot x, that is our horizontal touch distance, and we need to get the absolute value from this, so we need to write mathf.abs, and this will give us the absolute value. So the distance may be negative or positive, but we need the positive value always, so that is why we are getting the absolute value. So we will get, so let's say if the distance.x value is -5, we will get 5, and if it is 5, again we will get 5. Okay, so if mathf.abs distance.x is greater than mathf.abs distance.y, so if the x distance is greater than the y distance, then it will be a debug.log horizontal swipe. Okay, okay, now we need to check the same thing, so let's copy it and paste it here. So now else if the distance dot x is less than the distance dot y, then it will be a vertical swipe since our y distance is greater. Okay, so now we pretty much have the basic code to check the functionality of horizontal or vertical swipe. So let me go ahead and go back to Unity and plug my mobile device to Unity remote, and let's see if it works or not. So if I run it, okay, so it works. So I'm gonna go to Window, Console, and now if I swipe my finger up, oops, it doesn't say anything. Okay, so first of all we need to give the max time and max swipe distance values. I forget to add that. So for the max time we'll give 0.5 seconds, since we want our swipe to be very fast, and our swipe minimum distance should be around 50. I think 50 should be good. So now if I run it, if I swipe my finger up, it will say vertical swipe, and if I swipe my finger on the sideways, it will say horizontal swipe. Okay, so now one more thing we need to do is we need to check if our vertical swipe is actually up swipe or down swipe, and if our horizontal swipe is actually left swipe or right swipe. Okay, so we're gonna do that. So to check that, we're gonna say, so here you can see here we have our x value, and we need to check if this distance.x value is positive. If it is positive, then it is a right swipe, and if it is negative, then it is a left swipe. Okay, so we're gonna say if distance.x is greater than 0, that means if it is positive, then we're gonna write debug.log right swipe, and the same way I'm gonna copy it and paste it. If it is less than 0, then it's gonna be a left swipe, and the same way I'm gonna just copy it and paste it here. So same way our distance.y, if it is greater than 0, then it is up swipe, and if it is less than 0, then it is down swipe. Okay, so now we have pretty much the working code. So let's go to our Unity and check out what I have done or what errors I have done. So let's run it. So now if I swipe my finger up, it says vertical swipe, up swipe, down, vertical swipe, down swipe, left, horizontal swipe, left swipe, right, horizontal swipe, right swipe. Okay, so we have pretty much done the basic functionality of this thing. So now the last thing we want to do is we want to create a character and we want to check our swipe control on that. Okay, so we're gonna quickly create a character. So I'm gonna create 3D object quad, and this quad is gonna be our character, and I'm gonna quickly select the quad and reset the position. Okay, and I'm gonna delete this mesh collider from it. So remove component mesh collider, then I'm gonna add component physics 2D box collider 2D, and then add component physics 2D rigid body 2D. Okay, so now I'm gonna right click and duplicate this quad, and this time after duplicating I'm gonna, okay, where is that from our game view? So I'm gonna again reset its position. Okay, so here it is. So this time I'm gonna move it down and I'm gonna scale it up a bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna create light, directional light, and increase the intensity a bit so that it looks good. And from the second quad, that is the quad in the down, we're gonna remove this rigid body 2D component because we don't need here. So now if I play, this just falls down. So what we want is, when we just swipe, we want it to jump and then return back. Okay, so select this quad and I'm gonna add component, and for it, okay, so make sure to select the first quad, not the second one. I mistakenly selected the second quad. So select the first quad, go to add component, new script, and write player move or player jump, whatever. Let's say player jump. Create an add, double click to open it in MonoDevelop, and it will take ages to open. Okay, so here's our player jump script. So here we have our rigid body 2D. So in the player jump script, we're gonna quickly get access to this rigid body 2D. So first of all, I'm gonna create a public, not public, let's make it rigid body 2D, and I'm gonna name it RB. And inside start, I'm gonna say RB equals get component rigid body 2D. So this will give us access to this rigid body 2D, and then what you're gonna do is, I'm gonna create a new function called void jump, and in the jump function I'm gonna add a force to this rigid body. So I'm gonna say RB dot add force, and I'm gonna write new vector 2, and for the x value I'm gonna give 0 because I'm not gonna give any force in the x position, and for the y value let's make a jump force variable that we haven't created yet, but we're gonna create soon. So jump force and end it. So here I'm gonna create quickly a public float, and I'm gonna name it jump force. So this is the jump force by which our character will jump. Okay, so now only thing we need to do is, okay, we can give our jump force later, or let's give the jump force around 400. Okay, so this is our jump force. So now the only thing we need to do is, from the swipe tester, we need to get access to the player and add a jump to it. So let's move back to the swipe test script, and at the top I'm gonna create a variable public game object player. Okay, so if I go back, now you can see, okay, I forgot to give a semicolon. Oh, silly me. So now save it, and if I go here, as you can see, now we have this slot where we will drag and drop our first quad as a player. So drag and drop it here. Okay, so now we have access to the player. Now what you're gonna do is, in the swipe function, when we are doing the vertical swipe, here we are doing the vertical swipe and up swipe. So while doing up swipe, we will say player dot get component player move player jump. So we are getting the player jump script component from the player. Okay, if you take a look at the quad, here we have this player jump script, so we are getting access to that. So we are getting the player jump script, and from there we need to call the jump function. And before calling, make sure to make this jump function public. So let's make it public void jump, otherwise we cannot access it from other scripts. Okay, so now in swipe test.cs, I'm gonna go, and from player jump I'm gonna write dot and jump. Okay, so we are basically accessing the player jump script from the player component, and we are adding the jump. So now whenever we will swipe up, the player will jump. So now let's return back to Unity, and I'm gonna click the scene to play and also make our window console here. So now you will see that I will swipe up, that you can see from here, and the player will jump. So I swipe up, you can see here we have vertical swipe, up swipe, and the player jumps. Up swipe, player jumps, up swipe, player jumps, up swipe, player jumps. And you can use this mechanism to build any game, any kind of game where you actually want to put swipe. And I have just given an example of vertical swipe. You can use the same technique to use horizontal swipe or down swipe or whatever you want. So I hope you guys found this video informative. I know it's pretty long and probably pretty confusing, but I just wanted to keep the code as simple as possible. So that is why I tried to make all these variables so that you guys can understand it clearly and easily. Okay, so if you have any problem, you can just pause the video or rewatch the video or rewatch the sections that you want to watch, and I hope you find it helpful. So thank you very, very much for watching this video. I love you all. So this is Raja. Thank you very much. Have a great day and see you in another video. So goodbye. And make sure to like and subscribe. So see you later.